It's time for Comeback Sports with Brandon, the Coach Perry, and Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. Here we go.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome again to another edition of Comeback Sports, a weekly sports talk show where we bring you 10 sports topics going on across the country, across the globe, and all kinds of professional, college, and international sports. Folks, my name is Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty, and as always, I am joined by my partner, Brendan, the Coach Perry. Brendan, what's up, buddy?
What's up, Pat? Man, it's going to start being a really exciting time in sports when you got preseason basketball, hockey's coming back, we've got NFL football, college football, F1. I mean, we're going to have plenty of stuff to chat about, so it's going to be fun. Let's jump into tonight for sure.
No question. I always try to figure out, is April the best month for sports or is October? Those are the two months in sports that are a head and shoulders above the other 10 months of the year. So we're certainly in one of those awesome months right now. And folks, before we get going here with our 10 sports topics, make sure, again, if you really like this show and you want to give your opinion about what's going on, check out that call-in number at the very top of your screen. You can call into the show, ask a question, give an opinion on this show. A lot of good stuff. We've had some voicemails from folks who've called, and left a voicemail, not during the show, but later on or leading up to the show. So make sure you check that out if you do want to call in or leave a voicemail for us. Also, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. YouTube is where this show is streaming right now. Make sure you give us a subscription, and also make sure you, if you do subscribe, that you ring the notification bell there on YouTube as well, because that'll help get the feed of all the content that we're sending you here from Comeback Sports. And also, if you're subscribed on YouTube, dip into that live chat while the show's going on. You can participate that way as well. We will check out that live chat throughout the broadcast. We always have some great followers and great fans of Comeback Sports in that live chat. And finally, folks, check out the bottom of the screen right there. That's Brandon and I's social media accounts on Twitter. Make sure you check that out as well. You want to tweet at us, ask us a question, leave a comment. You can do that there as well. But we appreciate all the subscribers on YouTube, so make sure that's the first thing you do. We're going to kick things off with topic number one. Massive topic over the weekend here in New England, especially Brady wins the reunion here in New England. Tom Brady takes down the Pats 19-17 on Sunday night. Not the prettiest football game, Brandon, but a lot of drama. And honestly, I wanted the Pats to win, obviously, but just a fun game to watch on Sunday night.
Yeah, it ended up being actually more entertaining than I thought, to be honest. And the Patriots hung around a lot longer than I expected as well. And there's two things there. I don't know if it was because of the weather, and the weather tends to definitely slow down high-paced offenses like the Buccaneers, or if it was just that the Patriots really turned it up and were playing that much better football. But I don't know. That brings a little bitter taste in my mouth, because most people, I was telling people, I was like, this is the hardest I've seen them play all season long. And where has this team been the last couple of weeks? Because I didn't see any effort like that in the first three games. So I was a little disappointed in that fact. But I mean, it was definitely a great game to watch, I think. And it was, that primetime game, the only game that was on. So everybody was watching it. It was like one of those things where, like the local high school team's playing and the town shuts down to go watch it. This was the whole country pretty much shutting down to watch Brady return to the Bucs. And I think everybody enjoyed it, to be honest. I think everybody enjoyed it, whether you're a Patriots fan or a Buccaneers fan. But yeah, I honestly was predicting a blowout for the Bucs. I was predicting a 41-10 shellacking for, the Patriots, and it just didn't happen. But I really do think if the weather, had not been what it was, and obviously it was raining and it was a little chilly, and I think that the Buccaneers would have done their normal thing. I think it would have been a 41-10 game. But I have to nod my hat to Mac Jones. He played amazing in the game. And I think that was the difference in my prediction, is I didn't predict him to play that well. And so he scored a touchdown more than I even predicted. But great job by the rookie, even putting them in position to get that, game-winning field goal potentially. Then obviously Nick Folk with the big miss, but you can't really hate on Nick Folk considering he had made, I believe, 35 or 36 in a row at that point. And it was a deep field goal, and it was in the rain. So the footing is not that great. Even the contact on the ball is not that great. So no hate going around at all. I think the Patriots definitely put themselves in position to win the game. It just did not happen. And the Bucs did put themselves in position to win the game, and they did. And there's a big quote, obviously, and we say in sports, especially as a coach, and it's, good teams always find a way to win. And I think the Buccaneers did exactly that.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Definitely encouraging play from Mac Jones. He came into this game. He's a rookie. It's his fourth game as an NFL quarterback, as a starter in the league, going up against Tom Brady. First of all, he's going up against one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Second of all, it's the guy that was the legend right before him. Obviously Cam Newton was that 1 year in between. But this is the game. This is all this hype about Brady coming in, and Brady and Belichick. Brady's 20 years here. He looks up, there's 6 banners up there because of Brady. So, he could have, as a rookie, as a young guy just out of college, looked at this whole thing and, crumbled and turtled and had a terrible game. And I think most people would have kind of understood, like, hey, maybe this moment was just a little too big for the young rookie. We'll see how he bounces back. Mac Jones didn't have any of that. This might have been Mac Jones' best game of the year. He had a couple bad throws. One probably should have been intercepted by Devin White. And I believe he missed Hunter Henry streaking towards the end zone on that play. But, we're starting to nitpick now with Mac Jones, which means he's playing really well. So I thought he played great. Defense played a little bit better. Like you said, the weather might have aided in that. I did think that the offense could have played a little bit more crisp. This Patriots offensive line still does not look good. I don't know what's going on there. They were supposed to be one of the top 5 offensive lines in the league. Certainly has not been the case through the first 4 games. They have to right the ship there, and they have to do it ASAP. So we'll see what happens there. The big question, I think, coming out of this game now is, should Belichick have gone for it on 4th and 3? There was about a minute left in the game, instead of attempting this massive kick from 56 yards in the rain outdoors in New England. We saw Justin Tucker kick a 66 or 66 yarder in a dome against the Lions. So that's a little bit different than kicking a 56 yarder outside in the rain with a guy who doesn't necessarily have a big leg. Nick Folk has a very accurate leg. He's been very accurate since he's been with the Patriots. He's been really good. But he just has never been known to kick deep field goals like that. And on top of that, it's 4th and 3. The Patriots were moving the ball. I know it's late in the game and you're not really sure, what's going to happen. Mac's kind of never been in this, drive down the field late in the game to go win in the NFL yet. He certainly did it in college, but not in the NFL yet. And, so you don't know what he's going to do there. But they were playing so well. He was throwing the ball so well. They almost had that first down on 3rd down. Jacoby Myers was streaking over the middle, and Mac Jones tried to hit him, but the pass was batted down at the line of scrimmage. So, I would have gone for it on 4th down. It's easy to say, hindsight's 20/20. I would have gone for it. It was 4th and 3. It wasn't like 4th and 7. So, I think they could have gotten it. They were also going up against the Bucs team that had a bunch of sub defensive backs in there because a bunch of their players got hurt, and a guy like Richard Sherman who hasn't played football in how long. So I think they should have gone for it on 4th down. That's what everybody's been talking about this week, but that's not the case. And of course, the Bucs were able to hang on to win after Folk missed the field goal. So Brandon, do you think Belichick should have gone for it on 4th down instead of kicking the field goal?
Well, that is the question I was getting. A couple of people were asking me that even like minutes after the game. Yep. And my immediate response was, I believe, I think you do go for it, considering the weather and how deep it was, and knowing your kicker, that if we give him just a few more yards, that his accuracy is going to go through the roof, and that our chances of making it are going to be great. But I also told people, 4th and 3 in the NFL is no give me. So there is no chance you can run that ball there on 4th and 3. And the Patriots weren't running the ball at good all night anyway. The good thing was, though, Mac Jones was playing on fire and was doing great in those short little dink and dunk throws. He was extremely accurate. I think they needed just one more of those dink and dunk throws by Mac Jones. So I would have tried to call my best offensive play, get both of my tight ends out there too, because both of them finally showed up. and then try to at least get a 5 to 7 yard play, give ourselves a little chance that's closer to kick that field goal. And I think it definitely goes in. Obviously, it hit right off one of the uprights there. So, and like I said, you can't hate on Nick Folk considering he just broke the Patriots record for the most field goals in a row. And think about it. We had before him, we had two of the most accurate kickers in NFL history with, I want to say Janikowski, but obviously not Janikowski. I forgot the guy's name.
Steven Gostkowski.
Gostkowski. That one throws me off so much. Gostkowski. I love Janikowski, though. But Gostkowski and then obviously Adam Vinatieri. So it's one of those things where when you can break a record that they kind of had, you can't hate on Nick Folk at this point. I think you do have to just ask, was that the right call? Do we need to go for it and try to get a little closer? But hey, we'll talk about that some more with the Patriots, but rolling on tonight. Topic number 2, man, and this is the real question around in New England, the Stephon Gilmore dump, trade, release, whatever you want to call it, with this news that just broke this morning and disappointing news. Off to you, Pat. I'm so mad already.
Yeah, I mean, I'm disappointed too. Stephon Gilmore has been one of the best players for the Patriots over the past 4 seasons. He's one of the biggest reasons they won the Super Bowl in 2018 against the Rams. The reason they got there that year is Defensive Player of the Year that year. No, actually, I'm sorry. It was 2019. He's the Defensive Player of the Year. He's been one of the best corners in the NFL over the past 4 seasons. You do have to take in some of these factors. He's 31 years old, which isn't old, but that's starting to get up there, especially with the corner. You start to lose some speed. He's coming off of quad surgery. I think that's the biggest factor in this entire thing. He's coming off of quad surgery. He's in his last year of his deal. He wants an extension. He wants to stay with New England, but he wants big money. The Patriots have not been willing to give him that contract extension because they haven't seen him play really in a full game since his quad surgery. I don't blame the Patriots for not wanting to give him a contract extension right now because they haven't seen him. You don't want to give a guy a big 3-year deal after not seeing him play after surgery. I don't blame them there. What I kind of don't understand is they just traded him for a 6th-round pick to Carolina. Okay, you got something for him rather than just cutting him. I get that. I understand why you can't get a 2nd or 3rd-round pick because of the situation with the contract, because of your torn quad. Why wouldn't you just try to play this out and see if he'll just stay for the rest of the season, and then he just leaves in free agency and you get a comp pick from it? Like, I don't understand why they didn't just do that. So maybe they thought he would have been a guy in the locker room who maybe would have made noise about not getting his contract. He's never been that kind of guy. I even saw a story on Twitter today that he was helping Mac Jones this year with some stuff, even though he wasn't playing out there, and talking about Stephon Gilmore. So I think they should have just kept him throughout the year. They made some cap space, which I think was the biggest, thing that Belichick was trying to do, $6 million. They used some of that to sign Jamie Collins. I think they still have some left over. They had none, before they traded Stephon Gilmore. But if they hung on to him, maybe tried to hash something out and say, listen, we're going to keep you on this contract, and then you can ball out, and then maybe you can get another payday somewhere else in the offseason. That's what I would have done. There wasn't a big market for him. It just seems like they either should have traded him in the offseason or ridden out this season and then let him walk in free agency.
Yeah, no, I've got a bitter taste in my mouth because the Patriots never want to pay their veteran players. And this is routine now throughout history. And it all started with a guy named Randy Moss. And that's when it really started. And I'm starting to get irritated now because they routinely don't want to pay for talent. And it's that Bill Belichick, as a coach, is now just thinking, I'm the talent here. When you're not, coach, you're not the guy on the field. You call plays. As a coach, there's a saying that we have, you can just call all the X's and O's you want. If you don't have the Joes to pull it off, well, good luck. And he's starting to put himself in position where he's not going to have many Joes left. And I get it. They had all these big free agent acquisitions. Have you seen any of them really pay off at all this year? One of them, Matthew Judon. Matthew Judon has been all over the quarterback this year. I would say he's the one that's actually earning his money in those free agent acquisitions. And I don't want to hear anything about those 2 tight ends, considering they just had a good game for the first time this past week. And we all know what Jonnu Smith put on the field the week before. So it's really one of those things where you have to question, why don't they want to buy talent or pay for talent here in professional sports? And it's routine now. Is this coming from Robert Kraft or is this coming from Bill Belichick? As a lifelong fan, I want to know, and I'm sure there's other fans out there that want to know now too, because on top of Randy Moss, right? There's Randy Moss, there's Darrelle Revis. Oh, there's a guy named Tom Brady, the best quarterback of all time, who they didn't want to give him money and re-sign him as well. The list goes on and on and on. Like, I almost think at this point, they were probably like, hey, Julian, guess what? Retire or we're going to just cut you anyway. And Julian Edelman's like, you know what? I'm just going to retire. Like, because this is crazy. They don't treat their veteran players well. And in return in free agency, it's not going to pay out for them well down the line. But I'm just frustrated at this point. I get the Stephon Gilmore thing, but it's the history. It's the history for me. And now he just falls into that same category. Now, here for me is a much better solution. Months ago on this show, I said they should have traded him for Odell Beckham Jr. OBJ was on the market. Cleveland was shopping him. We wanted to shop potential Stephon Gilmore. It was just a perfect trade. And I get it. I know you said having Mac Jones and having a young quarterback with a wide receiver like Odell Beckham Jr. But my question to you, Pat, is do you think your football team is better or worse having a talent like that at wide receiver?
Excellent question. You definitely have more talent, but I think it's more than that. And, your biggest, the most important development throughout the season for the Pats this year is the development of Mac Jones. And if that is stunted because of Odell Beckham Jr. or another outstanding wide receiver that wants the ball, so if you brought in, DeAndre Hopkins, who wants the ball, if you brought in another receiver like that who wants the ball, maybe wouldn't get it as much because of the way the Patriots offense is, that might have stunted Mac Jones's growth. I'm not in the building. I don't know, but I think that's part of it. Going back to what you were saying before too, is that, there is a history of this with the Patriots. The problem is, the reason why it keeps happening is because it's worked in the past. Look at what happened with Logan Mankins. They didn't want to pay Logan Mankins. They shipped him out to Tampa Bay. As soon as they did that, the Pats started playing better in 2014 and won the Super Bowl. The Brady one is obviously very different. The Gronk one is obviously very different. We're still waiting to see, what happens after that. Randy Moss, they shipped him out of town. They started playing better. And I hate to say it because I loved Randy Moss, still love that guy, but they started playing better. So, Belichick has always been the kind of executive to say, get rid of a player a year too early rather than a year too late. We saw it with, like I said, Mankins. You saw it with Mike Vrabel. You saw it with Willie McGinnis back in the day. He probably thought that about Brady and about Gronk. Now, they're both still playing and still playing well. So I think that those two guys have outlasted that mantra from Belichick. He did the same thing with Ty Law. There's all these guys that he did this with, Deion Branch, and it sort of worked. So I think he can kind of go back and say, this has worked in the past. Maybe it'll work again. I also think Belichick loves making that midseason move, whether it's a trade or a signing. They already signed Jamie Collins. I think there's another move on the way, and they need that cap flexibility to do that. I think he looks at that as more valuable than having Stephon Gilmore. But that's going to do it for topic number 2, Stephon Gilmore shipping out of town. We're going to move on to topic number 3, and that is Urban on camera. Urban Meyer was caught on Friday night at a bar with a young lady, sort of giving him a lap dance. When I first heard about this, Brandon, I thought he was at a strip club. He wasn't. He was just at a bar. It was a young lady kind of rubbing up against him. What do you think about this whole situation, Brandon?
I think Urban Meyer is wishing he had some urban camo at that point, because, he could not blend in anywhere. And first off, I'm laughing at what producer Ben's pulling up. He's always got something funny that he's finding and pulling up. But, Urban Meyer got himself in a tough situation right now that I don't think anybody would have answers for, right? So it's really one of those things when you're that big of a public personnel or profile, man, you can't put yourself in a situation like that. I think we've seen that with more than obviously Urban Meyer. So we can't just say this is just on him. But he's got to look after himself there, and obviously he's got a wife too. So I think he's in more trouble at home right now than he is with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I totally understand that. I think Shad Khan is a smart businessman. He's taken over the Jaguars. I think he's done a great job with that organization. And I think he's got one of the best coaches, arguably, in the history of football, whether it be professional or college. I think you're going to give him some time. You're going to give him some chances here. You're going to give him some chances to even make mistakes. So I totally get where the Jacksonville Jaguars are coming, defending Urban Meyer. I think Urban Meyer's got himself in some deep water right now that he's trying to swim himself out of. And he's backtracking. He's obviously, apologizing a lot, backtracking as much as possible. But it's just really one of those things where, man, he got himself in a tough situation there. And we all know everything's on camera now, too. So you just got to watch out. Everybody's got a cell phone. Everybody's a reporter at this point now. So you've really just got to watch out. It goes for him. It goes for his players, right? It goes for pretty much any personal figure, not only in sports, but in politics and, pretty much anything. And even in business, right? I mean, you could be the CEO of a business and be out doing some crazy stuff like this. And a business like maybe GMC's like, man, we're canning you for that. So you just got to be careful. I think we all do, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because, sometimes it's, you just want to live your life and do as you please. And there was nothing illegal about what he was doing technically, I guess. Right. But it's optics nowadays. And the optics of that situation were definitely not good for Urban Meyer.
Yeah, I honestly don't have any problem with what you're seeing in the video right now. It's that he wasn't like, being overly aggressive towards the woman either. He was sitting down. I think she kind of like went over to him because he's at a bar in Ohio that he owns. He owns that bar. So first of all, Urban, go to the back room wherever, because you know where it is because you own the place, and hang out there. Why are you in the front of the bar, where everybody can see you? Everybody in Ohio knows exactly where you are. Number two, he didn't get back on the team plane after their Thursday night game against the Bengals. He stayed in Ohio because he wanted to hang out at his place in Ohio. That's the thing I have the biggest problem with. It seems like he's, we've had these questions to start the season. Everybody's come after him saying, is he as committed, to this Jacksonville program? In college, you don't have to spend as many hours as you do as an NFL coach. Is he committed enough to run an NFL program? This is the complete opposite of showing commitment. You don't go back on the plane with your team after a Thursday night game. Usually the day after the Thursday night game, you watch film. The day after a game, NFL teams watch film, and then it's the 2 days after that they usually take off. So what is he doing? I know he was in Ohio. I know he was in Cincinnati for the game, so he just decided to stay. For a, guy who's, like you said, a CEO of a company who just went to a conference, if they want to stay there for a couple of days, that's fine. You're running an NFL program, and they've been questioning your commitment, and then you go and do this. I just think this is dumb by Urban Meyer. If I'm on the Jaguars, I'm saying, you don't seem committed, so why should I? If I'm a player on the Jaguars, I'm saying, I don't take you seriously, and you're supposed to be running the place, I feel so bad for Trevor Lawrence. I love Trevor Lawrence. I think the guy's going to be a stud if he gets out of Jacksonville because this is a mess. Urban Meyer has so much work to do to clean up his image and to clean up the organization's image because it just doesn't seem like he's committed. He might be 1,000% committed. We don't know. But outward appearances, because of stuff like this, shows me that he's not.
Yeah, I mean, you have every right to say that. And I think you're hearing that from other sides of the sports verse, right? Or the sports universe, let's say. And I think, everybody has their right to say that and question that. And I totally get it. I think Urban Meyer is in some deep doo-doo, let's just say. And he's got to dig his way out of it or up what's creek without a paddle, obviously. He's got to find his way to land. But here's my coach's call before we roll on. I think here's my coach's call is if I have an 0-4 team, I think I'm getting on that plane with my 0-4 team. And on top of that, I'm sitting right next to my quarterback, my young quarterback, and I'm discussing maybe what happened in that game and potentially what we can do next week. And on top of that, I'm keeping his confidence up and I'm keeping his confidence high. especially with my whole team, because we got a long season to go and we've got to improve at this point. So I think that would have been the better call, obviously, for Urban Meyer to make. And I think he's obviously realizing that now himself. So hopefully Urban Meyer can fix that situation. I still like him. I think he's a great coach. I do think that was just a poor judgment call, and we all make them occasionally. But hey, rocking on, baby, rocking on. Rocking on to topic number 4, a great topic here, obviously. I mean, I love this. The Red Sox beating the dreaded Yankees. I don't even care if they lose the next series because they beat the Yankees, knocked them out of the playoffs. As far as I'm concerned, that's as good as a ring to me.
Yeah, I was not super confident going into this Red Sox game as a Red Sox fan, because the way that they got swept by the Yankees earlier in September, and just the way that they've been playing. I mean, they lost 2 out of 3 to Baltimore to the Red Sox before sweeping the Nationals over the weekend. They had to do that sweep or get that sweep in order to get into this game and have a home game at Fenway for this play-in wild card game. So I wasn't super confident, and Nathan Eovaldi had just gotten rocked by the Yankees the last time these two teams had played. So, but Eovaldi went out there. He was awesome. Xander Bogaerts, who's been in a total slump at the plate, hit an absolute rocket to center field for that 2-run homer to get things going. And then he had a really nice relay throw to get Judge out at the plate. It just seemed like last night the Red Sox were just in more command of the game. It just seemed like the game was going their way. We talk about football teams and how they're playing their style, and that's why they're winning. It just seemed like the Red Sox were in a position where it was the way they wanted to play. They were doing everything the way that they wanted to, where the Yankees they just kind of seemed rudderless. The only time they looked good was when Stanton was hitting bombs that still didn't leave the yard. I mean, everybody probably saw that clip from their radio announcer John Sterling, where he thought he hit a rocket over the Green Monster. I can't stand John Sterling, so that was the funniest thing I've seen in the history of sports.
What did I do wrong?
But oh my god! But other than Stanton, everybody else just didn't seem like they were comfortable. So it seemed like the Red Sox were playing the way they wanted to. Eovaldi was great. Tanner Houck looks so good. Now he's coming out of the bullpen instead of starting as a rookie. He looks really good. Little bit of a scare with Whitlock on the mound in the 9th, where Stanton hit that wraparound home run around Pesky's pole. It was a really line drive, short home run, which happens. They had a 5-run lead at that point, so it didn't matter. But just an electric night at Fenway last night.
Yeah, no, definitely an exciting game. Obviously had that playoff atmosphere, but for you viewers out there that don't know what we were just talking about earlier, the Yankees play-by-play guy, I thought Stanton had hit a home run there off the Green Monster, but obviously it hit just short. And then he goes, "Oh, what did I do wrong there?" And it's like, "Hey, man, you gave him the announcer's curse is kind of what you did there."
Exactly.
But I think obviously the Red Sox just came out firing on all cylinders, playing in a must-win game. And they knew it. And then playing at home, obviously, is a lot better in that situation in the home comfort of Fenway Park instead of being in Yankee Stadium. I think was huge. So they came out and played on all cylinders. But we were just talking about, a coach having that job of giving your players some confidence. And that's one of the things I personally love doing as a coach. But I think Alex Cora did exactly that with Nathan Eovaldi in the pregame. He was leading up to it and all the talk in the pregame, even days before, saying, "Hey, we're putting our best out there. We're putting our best on the mound. They're going to bring their best, and we'll just see what happens." So I think Eovaldi could bounce back from obviously that previous outing he had against the Yankees and say, "I've got it. I can play much better against these guys," and that's exactly what he did. And I think obviously the bat started coming out and they rang true and they gave him some backup there from the plate. And the Red Sox were just hitting on all cylinders and hitting on all cylinders at a right time against the right team, right? The evil empire, in my opinion. To knock the Yankees out, like I said, is like winning the title for me. Even if they go on a deep run here, I mean, I'll still be happy with what they did, just beating the Yankees and keeping them away from that championship ring.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the lead up to the game was great, because you had a day in between the end of the season and the wild card game, so they had all this stuff. Bucky Dent was at the game. I mean, what the hell's he doing there? I know exactly what he's doing there, but it didn't work, so thank God.
Yep.
You know, I'm sure some folks saw Jerry Remy come out in the golf cart and throw out the first pitch. Obviously, Remy's just not doing well health-wise. I hope he makes another full recovery from what he's dealing with. But that was emotional for Red Sox fans before the game, and fans in the stands, fans at home. So that was really cool. And Eckersley caught the ball from him, which was really cool too. But you know, it's just a crazy season between these two teams because the Red Sox look so dominant at the beginning of the year. Then the Yankees come back towards the end of the year. They look dominant against the Red Sox, and then the Red Sox end up winning that wild card play-in game. So really very interesting season between both these rivals. So we'll see what the Red Sox do in the ALDS coming up against Tampa Bay. It's going to be a tall task for them. And that's going to do it for topic number 4. Move on to topic number 5 here, and we're going to switch to F1 racing. And if folks who have Netflix and you're F1 fans, I can't recommend watching the Michael Schumacher documentary enough. Schumacher, just really good. I know who Michael Schumacher is, but I haven't seen a lot of content regarding him, you know, as far as documentaries or you know, footage from the past, and just a really great documentary. It's emotional at certain points too because of what happened to him in the skiing accident. But Brandon, what are your thoughts from this Michael Schumacher documentary?
Well, hey, first, if you're new to our show here, give us a subscribe, give us a like, and make sure you're hitting that ring button so you can get all the content fed right to your page. But yeah, man, I absolutely loved this documentary. I immediately had tweeted out, this is a well-done piece. And I highly recommend watching it for anybody, even if you're not an F1 fan. Maybe you're looking to jump into F1. This would be a great piece to watch with one of the greatest of all time. I honestly think, like I said, I mean, you have to put him up there. To me, greatest of all time is Michael Schumacher, Senna, and Lewis Hamilton. Those are the 3 that, to me, are just completely unmatched in the history of F1. And yeah, this documentary was just amazing to basically see not only his life on the track, but his life off the track as well, and some unseen footage of him and actually Mick Schumacher, current F1 driver, his son, seeing some of that footage. And then, yeah, the really emotional footage of Mick's interview there at the end. But yeah, I don't want to spoil too much for people that haven't seen it. But yeah, just an amazing, really documentary to watch that just gives you every angle of his career and his life. Another emotional part was when he was talking about Senna and how he lost Senna in that race. Literally, Senna drove off the track, literally right in front of him. Michael Schumacher was applying pressure to pass Senna, and Senna drove off the track at Imola and lost his life in 1994. And that was an early stage for Michael Schumacher in his career. And he talked about how that really was big to him, but he managed to bounce back from it and obviously go on to have many, many more successful years in the sport. But I mean, I've obviously been an F1 fan since those early 90s. And so I got to watch him. I got to watch the likes of Senna towards the end of his career. And like I said, Nigel Mansell and Damon Hill. So I've been around F1 for a long time, but this documentary brought me right back to the glory years of me being a child watching those F1 races, and then going into high school and watching Michael Schumacher dominate for Ferrari in the early 2000s, obviously joined Ferrari in 1999, but then really started to dominate in the early 2000s for them. And this documentary just shows it all nonstop, some great footage, and some of the best footage that stuck out to me and showed his dedication as a champion was when he was testing the car at Mugello, and it's at night, and there's no lights at this track, and he's still out there pushing the car to the limit. The only thing that you can see lighting up on this F1 car is the brake discs, because they're lighting up from the heat from him trying to stop going into some of these turns. So this guy was just amazing. And then another fact that he said that was amazing to him was that, you know, when he was young and he drove karts, that when it would rain, they would still go out there on their slick tires and try to drive their karts. And he said that was something that definitely helped him in Formula One. And you could see that because he was absolute masterclass in the rain, just like Senna, just like Lewis Hamilton. So I think that's one of the key things of being the greatest of all time, is being able to drive in any condition, especially in these Formula One cars. But this documentary is truly a well-done piece and so amazing. But before I hand it off to you, we'll talk about all-time wins. Lewis Hamilton, obviously, we talked about him getting to 100. He's probably going to have 100 plus. But Michael Schumacher with 91 wins currently right now is second. Before that, he was the all-time wins leader before Lewis took that from him. But I have to think, and I've said in the past that I thought there might be some guys that would get to that 91, and I've rethought that, and especially after watching this documentary again, and I will say that nobody's going to get to that 91 of Michael Schumacher. And I don't think anybody's going to get even close to what Lewis Hamilton's putting up now in the win column. But I think Michael Schumacher was truly a legend, a one-of-a-kind driver in F1. And the message is obviously still keep fighting, Michael. We love you, and I personally love the guy. And that was another thing I tweeted out. The reason I love Formula One is because of Michael. And so I will always have a special place in my heart for Michael Schumacher and Ferrari, even though right now I'm a huge Lewis Hamilton fan and Mercedes fan. But I will still always be rooting for that red car, and I will just always love to watch the glory years of Michael Schumacher racing it.
Yeah, the 2 points that you brought up that I think are great is, as far as his F1 career, is like you mentioned, because he grew up with the go-karts, running them and driving them in that rain. Then they showed footage of him driving in the rain and how much faster he was than anybody else driving in those poor weather conditions. But he still had unbelievable control of his car, despite the weather conditions and despite the speed he was working with. So that was like a huge advantage for him. You saw how many different races in poor weather conditions he ended up winning because of that. The other thing, too, is, like you mentioned, when he first got to Ferrari, the car wasn't great. I mean, the car was not up to par with some of the other cars. McLaren had an awesome car at that point, and Ferrari just wasn't there at that point. And they showed, Schumacher not just working on the trying to get the car to where he wanted it to be, but he was in the garage with the crew, and he was working with the crew. And I forget the name of the who was running the crew at that point, but he said that it really showed the rest of the crew that Schumacher was there with them, and he was committed to them and saying, I'll be here with you. We're going to work on this together, and that's why we're going to become champions, because of the way that we're working on this car together here late at night. We're doing what nobody else is doing. We're here later than everybody else together. And I just thought that those are the types of things that you see all-time greats do, whether it's Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Bill Russell, Michael Schumacher. Those are the types of things that all-time great champions do. And, it was, the documentary is very well done. It's not just all about his races. They kind of almost, I don't want to give it away too much, but, once they start showing him when he really gets going as a Ferrari driver, once he starts winning, they kind of fast forward through the rest of his wins and go towards the latter part of his life when he actually retires and then does other things. So it's very interesting how they kind of laid it out. But just if you want to know anything about Schumacher, or if you're getting into F1, or if you really like F1, I suggest you watch it, the Schumacher documentary on Netflix. Netflix, give us some loyalties, man. Throw us some money here, because we're pumping this documentary for you, Netflix. But yeah, it's outstanding. If anybody has any interest in anything F1 related or Michael Schumacher related, I suggest you watch it.
Yeah, I mean, you compared him to a great like Michael Jordan. Well, here's a moment that he did that was Michael Jordan-esque, was, he walked away from the game at an all-time high, but then years later, he comes back. He comes back and he's suiting up for Mercedes of all teams, right? Suiting up for Mercedes in that car, and with his custom red helmet with that silver Mercedes car. That's another thing I'll never forget as a Formula One fan. But yeah, man, Michael Schumacher is a legend, one of the greatest of all time. And like I said, I believe his 91 wins will be safe second all time. I believe that will be untouched when we look at history and look back at Formula One wins. But I definitely highly recommend watching this for any fan of Formula One and any fan of motorsports in general. But moving on and rocking on tonight. Rocking on to some more F1, some great F1 content here, especially for you fans here in the United States, where the date is finally set for the Miami Grand Prix, and it's going to be May 8th, 2022, man, and I'm trying to figure out how I can make my way down there.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome. Early May, I feel like is a great time to have this in Miami too, because it's not going to be super hot. It's going to be warm. It's Miami, of course, but it's going to be probably perfect weather there in May. Where who knows where the pandemic's going to be at that point, but it seems like that's kind of when hopefully this pandemic is starting to really wrap up and people can really just enjoy this Grand Prix down in Miami. We've been talking about them having this in Miami for, since we started our show. And, it's just going to be an awesome place to have an F1 race. We mentioned just, how they bop around to these different cities, overseas, and how the glamour and the prestige and the showmanship of all these races. And, that's Miami. There's other places they could have had it, like in LA or New York or maybe Chicago. But Miami is going to be an awesome place for this. I think it's the perfect setting here in America to have a Grand Prix. And like I said, the weather and the timing of this is going to be awesome. And it's earlier in the season. So, this is sort of like you don't have F1 for a while. Then at the beginning of the season, you have this race in Miami. So we're going to be talking about this and hyping this for the entire off season. So it's going to be a lot of fun to have it down there in South Beach. And, it's a vacation destination for people too. So if you're going down to the Grand Prix, you stay a full week or, more than just a couple of days. And it's one of those places where this is going to be pretty sweet. And I think we're all looking forward to checking out this race and just seeing the scenery down in Miami for this Grand Prix.
Well, hopefully, like I said, if I can weasel my way down there and I'll have some first-class scenery for us and I'll be reporting live for us from, maybe even the paddock if I can weasel my way in there as well. But yeah, I mean, this is something that we've been covering since the news broke, like a while ago, and we've been covering it routinely. But now it's changed because now we have the official date. All right. We know what the track layout's going to look like. We know what the cars are going to be looking like because there's going to be new cars going around with the total regulation change. So it's just getting exciting the more and more the closer we get, I should say, to this actual May 8th date. But I think this was an amazing date that they picked. I think the only thing that would have been better is maybe, like middle April or late April, it would have been, like you said, maybe a little cooler in South Beach, Miami. But I still think this early May date is an amazing one where it won't be too hot, but it will be warm enough, just enough to give you that Miami feel and the glitz and the glamour and the bikinis and the Ferraris and the McLarens, that South Beach feel is going to be in full effect come May 8th. And like I said, I definitely want to make my way down there and see this race because if you're a fan of the United States, and I mean, well, obviously we're a fan of the United States, but if you're an F1 fan here in the United States, this might be one of your closer Grand Prix to go to, especially on the East Coast. The other one is obviously the United States Grand Prix in Austin, Texas, but that's kind of far away for some of us on the East Coast. But even just today, F1 talked about, rumor has it, that they might be talking about bringing another F1 race here to the States, potentially in Las Vegas, which would obviously be another destination that would be premium for F1, depending on what kind of track they could provide for us out there. But right now, I'm super excited to just even have two Grand Prix for the United States and F1, and I'm really excited for this Miami Grand Prix. I really do think it's going to be an amazing showing for F1 and for the United States.
Yeah, no question. And I think we sort of look at F1 as this kind of international, a lot of European cities, and obviously Asia has some Grand Prix over there. Now to bring it to the U.S. and really kind of glamorize it here in the U.S., bring it to Miami, I think is awesome for all F1 fans here in America. And that's going to do it for topic number 6 that we just finished up. Moving on to topic number 7, and that's Ravens run. The Baltimore Ravens, towards the end of their game against the Denver Broncos, they had the game wrapped up. There was basically, they just needed to take a knee to finish off the game, but the Ravens call a running play, at the end of the game. And apparently the Denver Broncos coaching staff, Brandon, wasn't too happy about this. What's your stance on this situation with the Baltimore Ravens?
I personally loved it, to be honest. I love the footage of the Broncos coaches getting mad and throwing their headsets down because it's professional football, man. You've got to play the game nonstop. And luckily his players were playing. They had their heads in the game. A lot of their linemen were down. They were ready to play. And so it was just really one of those things where people are bringing up player safety, but the Broncos were ready to play on that play, especially all the defensive linemen. They were down, they were ready. So I don't think anybody was at risk of getting hurt right there. I think they knew a play was happening and were fully engaged in it. I just think the Broncos coaches are a little upset with the like unspoken rule of, hey, the game's over. Nobody really has a chance of changing the outcome at this point. Let's kind of go home. But when it's professional sports, you have every right to continue playing the game. And like many other people have brought up, if you don't like it, you've got to kind of stop them. And you have the ability to do that if you're the defense and you want to stop them there on that play. But I loved it. I think the Ravens have been making a lot of headlines this year with obviously the way they played early and not looking so good. And now they're playing great and looking amazing. They're hitting on all cylinders, and they've been winning in some amazing fashion too with Lamar Jackson. But I do think this is a story that for some people it should be a no story, because for me, I don't see why they got so upset. And I brought up the story because to me, I'm just like, hey, they shouldn't be upset by that. They expected it. They should have known it was coming, and it was just a little quarterback sweep that they ran to the outside to finish the game. So it wasn't like they were like dropping back and throwing a Hail Mary or trying to score another touchdown. They were literally just running out the clock at that point. And instead of taking a knee, they just did a simple run play with a little run quarterback sweep to the outside. But yeah, if I'm the Denver Broncos, I don't complain about that. I got to get back to the drawing board and figure out ways that I could have won the game and how I've got to win next week. And just bring a different mentality as well, too. I'd be telling my guys, hey, we're going to play 40 minutes here or 4 quarters end to end nonstop until the last whistle. And that includes in situations like that. So I think as a coach, there's just a lot of learning that you can have from it and bring to your players.
Yeah, I don't understand what the Broncos are upset about. I think this is stupid. I can't stand when at the end of games, even in Division I college football. I mean, I know it's student athletes, so it's different. But like with pro sports, if you don't like somebody not stop, running all over you or throwing all over you, then stop it. You're getting paid too. So. But I did think it was weird. The whole reasoning for why they ran the ball was because supposedly the Ravens had 6, 7, I forget how many games in a row where the team rushed for over 100 yards. And Harbaugh said he wanted to keep that streak going because it meant a lot to the team or meant a lot to, whoever. And then Lamar Jackson came to the podium and somebody said, does that record mean anything to you? And Lamar Jackson said, no, I just care if we get the W. I just want to win the game. Which was awesome for Lamar Jackson to say. But what is Harbaugh talking about? I don't understand why anybody would ever care about that streak or that record or whatever. But the whole thing is just, who cares? I don't understand why the Broncos would be upset about this. It's just one play at the end of the game. It was a run, like you said, just a quarterback sweep. If anything, if I'm the Ravens, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be running Lamar Jackson on a quarterback sweep during a meaningless part of the game. That's what I would be more concerned with if I was the Ravens themselves, not necessarily the opposing team. So that would be my stance on it. It did seem like a pointless run. But if I'm the Broncos, I'm not saying like there's an unwritten rule that you can't do this at the end of the game. That's crazy. I can't stand that stuff. I hate it in baseball because it's like they have all these unwritten rules. And it's like, then why don't you just make them rules if you think it's this important to you? And then in football, now you're going to start doing this? No, this is ridiculous that the Broncos are making us think about this.
Yeah, no, like I said, I love the lesson of playing the game start to finish and giving it your all in every single play and finishing what you do too. So finish out the game and finish it out to the best of your ability. So I think the Broncos complaining about this is kind of nonsense at this point. I think they're just more upset that they were obviously going to take the loss and they were going to have that L in the win-loss column. And so I don't think that's anything big. I think I'd be more upset if, like I said, if they were dropping back trying to throw like a touchdown pass to Hollywood Brown over the top or something, then I'd be like, come on, what are you doing now? Like, we're just trying to go home. Like at this point, like take the knee or run the ball. Like, let's get out of here instead of throwing the ball. But they weren't doing that. They ran a simple run, little quarterback sweep. I think what you brought up was more important. Like, putting your quarterback in a situation like that late in the game, I might bring my backup in to run that play and let him do that as well. Or, hey, go Wildcat or something, put a running back in there and then try that run. But, yeah, putting Lamar at risk, I think, is the bigger story there, to be honest. But, hey, moving on tonight, rocking on to topic number 8. topic number 8 is a big one here, especially, hey, if you're a McDonald's fan, shout out to McDonald's. McDonald's, send us some gift cards, man, because we're hyping you up. But Bubba's got McDonald's on the car, gets the W with the McDonald's on the car. We're talking about Bubba Wallace getting the win at Talladega in the NASCAR Cup Series, the first African-American winner in the Cup Series since 1963, when Wendell Scott became the first ever to do that. So this is a big story, man. This is great for Bubba Wallace, great for NASCAR, great for America.
Yeah, no question. Almost 70 years since it was done the last time. Real quick before we keep going with this topic, first of all, I want to acknowledge Rosamond Reese. He's one of our most loyal subscribers, one of our biggest fans. He's in the live chat right now talking about that Stephon Gilmore trade. So we appreciate you, Rosamond, always, man. We appreciate you checking in once again tonight. And you can be just like Rosamond if you give us a subscribe on YouTube, and then make sure you ring that bell, that notification bell that you subscribed, and then you can jump in the live chat and you can give your opinion on some of this stuff as well, and we'll give you a shout out if you're one of our loyal subscribers. But going back to Bubba Wallace's win at Talladega at the American Cup Series, you know, like you mentioned, just sort of, you know, this kind of monumental thing. You know, Bubba's been doing a lot of this over the last few years where he is, you know, because he's an African-American driver, there's a lack of them, obviously, in NASCAR. And for him to win another one, it keeps showing, you know, sometimes when I think minorities, you know, start to win a little bit in sports where there's not enough of them, when there's not enough representation, that people start to say, oh, he's just popular because he's the one, you know, minority in this particular sport. But when somebody like Bubba Wallace, who just keeps winning, he's really just showing his mettle. He's saying, no, I'm this good, and that's why you should pay attention to me. And he's doing it again here with the Talladega. We're at Talladega. So I think this is great for him. This is great, you know, to kind of put in his back pocket and say, listen, this is what I did. I'm not just this kind of figurehead. I'm this great driver, and you better pay attention to me. And look at the fact that the last black driver to do it was back in 1963, you know, almost 70 years ago, or 60 years ago, excuse me. Just unbelievable. So that's awesome for him, and it's great for NASCAR. I mean, it is. NASCAR gets more attention because of Bubba Wallace than almost any other driver right now, and he's helping the sport, and he's just continues to show the quality driver that he is every time he goes out there.
Yeah, no, this is big news. This is huge for the sport. Like I said, huge for Bubba Wallace and his fans, huge for America in general, huge for NASCAR, though, definitely. Like you said, Wendell Scott, who's a NASCAR Hall of Famer, most recently was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame, being the first African-American Cup Series winner in 1963. And then to have it go that far of a gap, I think showed, you know, that there weren't any drivers even in the Cup Series to be able to do it again. And so then when Bubba Wallace came on scene, I think a lot of people really got excited, and for the right reasons, obviously, because he is such a talented driver and he has the history of winning and getting himself up the front there. And he's now doing it in the Cup Series again with the big sponsor, right? Like McDonald's too. And with Michael Jordan, he drives for Michael Jordan. This is Michael Jordan's team with Denny Hamlin, okay, 23 Racing. So this is an amazing news to have the first African-American winner since 1963 be with Bubba Wallace and Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin. And like you said, he's really one of the biggest faces of NASCAR right now, Bubba Wallace, with a guy like Chase Elliott and another guy like Ryan Blaney. And then you got Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch. But there's so many great drivers in NASCAR, and Bubba Wallace is actually showing that he belongs right up there with them, getting a win at a plate track like Talladega that is extremely hard to win at. This is a track just like Daytona that you might find yourself in the big one, they call it, and that will end your race immediately. So you really have to be smart with how you race at tracks like this, and he did an amazing job. Obviously, too, there was some rain on the day, too, and so it was a rain-shortened race, but all the drivers knew that was coming, and they all started in that second stage, started positioning themselves to be able to try to race for the win, because they knew at the end of that second stage that was going to be it, and the winner was going to be declared, whoever was in first at that point. So Bubba did an amazing job of racing all those guys, getting himself up there, putting himself in position to win this Cup race, and he did it, man. He pulled it off. And like I said, at Talladega, such a special place to do it. And this goes down in history, man, and just an amazing win for Bubba Wallace, an amazing win for motorsports fans in general.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, McDonald's has got to be happy because you're going to see the video of that and pictures of that for years to come because of the history that Wallace just made. So McDonald's has got to be licking their chops about that kind of exposure. Not that they need a ton of exposure, but they got to love it right there. Bubba Wallace winning down there at Talladega. And that's going to do it for topic number 8. We're going to move on now to topic number 9. We're going to head to college football, and the topic name is Irish Cash. Notre Dame paid $1.2 million to the Cincinnati football program to come to Notre Dame and play them. Cincinnati, who's a top 10 team, came in and beat Notre Dame. I'm a Notre Dame fan. Very impressive win there for Cincinnati. They are showing why they belong in that playoff team conversation. As you know, early this season, it's only been 5 weeks now in college football, but they belong in that conversation. They just showed why they did going into Notre Dame and beating them. So now if you're Notre Dame, you're like, we just paid $1.2 million to lose to a non-Power 5 conference school, Brandon. What do you think Notre Dame's thinking right now?
Oh, man. Well, first, before I jump into that, hey, give us a subscribe here. Give us a like. We're on a mission to 1,000 subs. We need you to hit that. So hit that sub button and hit that ring the bell, too, to get your content fed live to your page. But, man, I love the name here, first off. Irish Cash, man. Irish Cash. And that's what I'm thinking if I'm Cincinnati, that I'm just going to be enjoying this Irish Cash in my program for at least the next year. Because that money, man, is huge for a college football program going forward, either buying equipment or paying for travel or paying coaches. So this is huge to get that money. But on top of that, to go in there and then hand them a loss, right? A historical program like Notre Dame's, that's being like, hey, you're going to pay me, and then I'm going to come in there and kick your butt, too. So it's like, the what? Like, I don't think Notre Dame expected that to happen at all. And I think when this agreement was made in the offseason, I don't think Notre Dame realized how good Cincinnati was going to be this year and that they were going to even be a top 10 team. So I think, this is a huge mistake by Notre Dame, obviously, and they're really feeling it, obviously, with the loss, but then with the major press that's coming from it, too, being like, wait a minute, you paid them $1.2 million just to play you, and then you lost to them on top of that? So I think this is, like I said, a deal that was made in the offseason where Notre Dame's like, hey, man, we play an independent schedule because they're not in an actual conference, so they get to play whoever they want, which is genius at times. At other times, it's idiotic. So that's a whole different other topic to jump on. But I think this is one of the times where it definitely came back to bite them, okay? And they were like, hey, yeah, we're probably going to get a win from this team. So, yeah, we'll pay you some money to come into Ann Arbor so we can play you. Why not? And then Cincinnati comes in there, shows their real might, and gets the win, like I said, against a historical team. That is Notre Dame. We all love them. But, man, I think this is big for college football. This is big, obviously, for the University of Cincinnati and big for Notre Dame. So they've got to bounce back from this, and they've got to bounce back quick. But, yeah, man, if I'm Cincinnati, I'm enjoying this Irish Cash, and I'm enjoying it as long as possible.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Cincinnati, this was like you killed two birds with one stone here. You got a huge win against Notre Dame, who's also a top 10 team. And then on top of that, you got paid $1.2 million to go to that game and beat them and help your rankings by beating them. So just a phenomenal weekend for Cincinnati college football. If I remember correctly, Brian Kelly used to coach at Cincinnati. That's where he came from to get to Notre Dame, right? I mean, I can't remember 100% because he's been at Notre Dame for so long now. But, yeah, it's just crazy how these types of things happen. Unfortunately, this happens in high school football, too, depending on where you are. I know, some of those Last Chance U documentaries and some of those Netflix shows, they've shown teams that are, unfortunately, from poor communities, they go and play a team in a richer community to get on their schedule. They actually are paid to go and play, and sometimes they get walloped because they just don't have the resources, and it helps their program to get more money, but then the kids get smacked around. It's just a strange kind of dynamic especially down south where they do that a lot. Yeah, I mean, this is unbelievable that Cincinnati was able to get that money and get a huge win. Now they're in that national spotlight. They already kind of were, but that just helps build their resume to try to get towards the playoffs when they beat a team like Notre Dame. So, Notre Dame's probably like, I don't know where we go from here right now, because they still have, a lot of Big Ten schools to play left in the season. Michigan State. They sort of play almost a Big Ten schedule, even though, like you said, they're independent. They have all that money because they're independent, and NBC airs all their games. It's the only college football team that plays, whose games are on NBC. So that's how they get all that independent money, and then that's why they don't need to belong to a conference. But this is sometimes the fallout from that, and we saw that over the weekend. So very impressive win for Cincinnati. I'm going to be rooting for them certainly down the stretch. I do hope they make the playoffs, because I love seeing some of these non-Power 5 schools getting into the postseason, because it just kind of sparks an argument. Are they as good as everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely an impressive win for them, and one that's great for their program, certainly. And it's one of those things where I'm curious to see who they play the next couple of games, because I want to see if they can continue on with this momentum. But I also want to see if Notre Dame can bounce back from this major loss and maybe try to get themselves back into contention in the top 10 at this point, if they're even lucky at this point, because that was such a major loss. But yeah, I mean, definitely huge for the University of Cincinnati. And just quickly, because it's a college football topic and you talked about the playoffs, I mean, I think if anybody getting in the playoffs is going to have to deal with, obviously, Alabama and Georgia. Those are the two best teams in college football right now. And I think hands down, just separated from everybody right now. Just
absolutely
them and everybody else. So it's just really one of those things. I think Cincinnati still got some work to do, but I want to see who they're playing next, man. And we'll definitely keep an eye on them. But hey, rolling on and rocking on to our final topic of the night. Topic number 10, trilogy fight, man. We love covering trilogy fights here on Comeback Sports, and this is the trilogy fight between Fury and Wilder, and I'm sure it is going to be fireworks.
Yeah, that's right. They got their third fight coming up on Saturday, Fury and Wilder. Anytime that boxing can sort of hype up a heavyweight fight. I mean, I love watching the middleweights. The middleweights were unbelievable in the 80s. We had Marvin Hagler around here. We just lost him earlier in the year. But, you had all these good fighters. And, more recently we've had Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, the light middleweights. And, it doesn't seem like there's been great heavyweight fights lately, unless it involves Fury and Wilder. And not necessarily for the great boxing, although Fury's been really good in the two fights. It's just hype and it's characters. And, this third fight I think is going to be huge, because that first fight, it was a split decision, even though a lot of people thought that Fury should have won. Everybody thought he was the better fighter in that first fight, but it was a split decision in the first fight. So there's a little controversy there, and people thought that Fury should have won. Second fight, Fury doesn't necessarily knock out Wilder during the fight, but Wilder doesn't come out after the 7th round, or it was either for the 7th round or after the 7th round. And then Wilder comes out a couple days later and says his manager shouldn't have thrown in the towel. He could have fought longer. He also says that the outfit that he wore into the ring weighed 40 or 45 pounds and was way too heavy for him. And that's why he lost his legs, because he was wearing this heavy outfit. And, Wilder just seems like he's always got excuses after he loses a fight. So I'm interested to see in this third fight, because there's just controversy from the first two, and there's all this, backlash, or Wilder coming back and saying that he'll beat him the next time because of what he was wearing into the ring. They said that his suit was 40 pounds, but they found out when he trains he wears one of those 45-pound weighted vests. So how are you not used to a 40-pound suit when you wear a 45-pound vest training this whole time? So, it just seems like Wilder's always got some kind of excuse. But I do want to see these two massive dudes fight for this third fight, because I think this will be big for heavyweight boxing. If it's a good fight, if these two guys, if there's no major controversy like there was in the first two, I think that'll be important. And it's just a good, clean fight between two good heavyweights. I think that's the most important thing for this one.
Now, you bring up a great point with his costume wearing, but I had read you most recently that he was going to be having another elaborate costume here. So it's one of those things where you can't use that as an excuse, if you're going to continue to wear them. You know what I mean? It'd be different if you were like, yeah, I'm done with those things. I'm just coming out in my normal robe. Then people might believe what you said there about the last costume. But if you come out in another costume like that again, then that thing's out the window there, man. You can't say that type of stuff. But I'm definitely looking forward to this fight. Obviously, it's a trilogy, so it's just like kind of winner take all mentality. And obviously in boxing, a combat sport, you love to see this type of moment. But, you know, and this is big for the heavyweights, like you said, too, because there's also another heavyweight that has kind of just put himself in the limelight. This guy named Uric that beat Anthony Joshua just, I believe, last week or the week before that. So it's like one of those things where, like, is he going to be next in line to maybe fight the winner of this fight? And so I think they have to be thinking about that, because that Uric guy, you know, Anthony Joshua was pretty much on the map to fight these guys. And now Anthony Joshua has been beat a few times over these last few years. So he's out of here. You got to put the hook on him. So this Uric guy has now put himself in position to be able to fight the winner of this matchup. So there's obviously a matchup like looming down the pipe for one of these two guys. But here in this matchup, in this trilogy fight, I think it is going to be exciting. I think it is going to be fireworks. They're all going to be coming out and just giving everything they got. And when you got two massive guys like that, you know, throwing dynamite, then you're bound to see something great happen. And it's one of those things where I doubt this will go the full distance. But if it does, then I've got to kind of question being like, what kind of fight is this? Is this just kind of about the money?
Right.
And you guys wanted to get the extra money to have the third one? Or is it going to be, like I said, that slug out fest that we all want to see in the third one to prove who the true winner is? So I'm really looking forward to this fight. And obviously it'll set up this next big fight too down the line.
Yeah, I don't think it'll go the distance either. And I think both these guys, at least I think Fury is determined to show that the last fight wasn't a fluke and it wasn't about the suit that Wilder wore into the ring. And then, of course, it was a split decision the first time around. So both fighters have a lot to prove here in the third fight, considering what happened in the first two. So I do think that they're going to come out swinging and coming out slugging in this one early on. So, you know, if we can check out this fight, I think this will be huge for heavyweight boxing, especially because boxing, you know, we've talked about this a lot. You know, the UFC is just taking so many eyeballs away from boxing right now. It hasn't stopped. I think boxing is actually starting to kind of get a little bit more attention because of somebody like Tyson Fury, because of Wilder, because of the fight you just mentioned that was a couple of weeks ago. If this can keep building up and then the winner of this has that fight later on down the line, that will certainly help heavyweight boxing big time. So, you know, if this is a good fight here, this third fight overall, I think that's going to be huge for heavyweight boxing across the board. Folks, that's going to do it here for Comeback Sports this week. I want to thank everybody for joining us once again. Our guy, Ruzaman Ruiz, jumping in there in the live chat, jumping in there and giving us some of his opinions. He was upset that his Seattle Seahawks, we didn't even know he was a Seahawks fan, his Seattle Seahawks didn't go after Stephon Gilmore because they really need a corner. So, Ruzaman, I'm sorry I didn't get your guy, Stephon Gilmore. Maybe another corner will shake free. Maybe they'll go after Jalen Smith, who's now a free agent as well, because the Seahawks need some help on defense. So we'll see what happens, Ruzaman. But, folks, you can be like Ruzaman. Subscribe to our channel, Comeback Sports, on YouTube. Then you can go in the live chat. Also, make sure you ring that bell that says that you did subscribe to us, too. And you can also follow us on Twitter. You can certainly call into the show. We put up the call-in number all the time during the show. And you can also call in and leave a voicemail. When the show is not live, you can do it later on in the week if you don't want to be live on our show. Sometimes people get nervous. You can leave a voicemail. It's a lot easier. You do that, we'll play it on the show. So make sure you check that out as well. Brandon, any final thoughts, my friend, before we sign off?
Well, I got one for Ruzaman, man. I love, obviously, Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf, and I've got DK Metcalf on my fantasy team, so I need him to continue doing his thing with Russ. But then just quickly, obviously, we got the Turkish Grand Prix coming up here, and I got a prediction that Lewis Hamilton's going to win the Turkish Grand Prix and extend his lead in the championship.
Yeah, lots at stake there in the Turkish Grand Prix. That's going to be another big one in F1 racing. This final couple of races are just going to be so important to that Championship Cup win at the end of the season. Folks, thank you again for joining us here on Comeback Sports. We will see you next time. Have a good week, everybody.